Jai Hind, this is Brigadier Hemant Mahajan, and I welcome you to a special program, Facebook Live, on the occasion of 12th anniversary of terror attack on Mumbai, which took place on 26/11/2008. This terror attack, the terrorists attacked economic capital of our country, held it to ransom for 3 days, killed more than 250 civilians, lot of security forces, caused untoward damage to India's economy, and finally the terrorists were cleared from various hotels where they had entered by the National Security Guard commandos of the Indian Army. Today, what we will do is we'll carry out an assessment of India's coastal security on the 12th anniversary of 26/11 attack. Before we commence our presentation, I will briefly pay a tribute to all the heroes of 26/11. Uh, First, let me very briefly tell you as to how the attack took place. Terrorists took off in a boat from Karachi port of Pakistan. They hijacked an Indian fishing vessel called Kuber. In this boat, they traveled up to the Indian exclusive economic zone. Thereafter, they got into rubber dinghies and landed up in Mumbai at Kulaba on what is known as the fishing harbor. There they landed. Then they divided themselves into four groups, went into various directions, fired on the innocent citizens on the road, entered Sri Chhatrapati Shivaji terminus, or also called as the VT terminus, entered hotels where foreign tourists used to stay. They wanted to hold these hotels to ransom and kill as many international tourists as possible so as to internationalize Pakistan's intention of fueling terrorism into our India. Initially, the Mumbai police and the Maharashtra police could not carry out a proper assessment as to how many terrorists had come inside because they are firing from number of places. Initially, the number assessed was much more than the actual number. Slowly, as information started coming and an assessment was made, it was realized that they had basically focused on 4 to 5 important places. The Mumbai police could not adequately tackle them. The Indian Army was called. It carried out a cordon of various hotels in which they had entered. A decision was taken to call the National Security Guard. Today is not the time to talk about NSG, but very briefly I can state that NSG can be broadly be divided into two parts. First is the NSG which takes part in counter-terrorist operations and anti-hijacking operations. They are basically 51 and 52 Special Actions Group of the NSG called as SAG, and it consists of only officers, JCOs, NCOs and Jawans from the Indian Army. The second component consists of the Special Protection Group, which basically looks after the VIP security. I will focus today only on the anti-terrorist part of the operation. The two groups were at that time stationed in Delhi. Decision was taken to get them to Mumbai by a special aircraft. The NSG is very fast as far as their reactions are concerned. They were immediately ready and landed up on the Delhi airport. However, the special aircraft which was to bring them to Mumbai, was delayed considerably because the Home Minister at that point of time wanted to come in the same aircraft. In fact, it was even announced that the NSG is likely to land in Mumbai in certain times. Those of you who have connection with the armed forces will realize that such kind of an operations, which are intended operations, are never publicized in this manner because their security can get jeopardized. However, this was done, and finally the NSG landed almost 6 7 hours late, after which they were ready. If they had come earlier, we would have stopped a lot of damage, a lot of casualties which had been incurred by the civilians, by the tourists, and even by security forces like the police, etc. The NSG landed up there. Nobody could properly tell them. This is all taken from the NSG report which was submitted to the government. Nobody could tell them, give them an exact assessment of how many terrorists were there in each hotel. It was finally decided that the NSG will carry out operations from top to bottom, meaning they will land up either by helicopters or by other means, go up on the top floor and will do clearing action from top to bottom. The exact sketches of the hotels were not available. However, hotel staff at Taj definitely gave them a great help as far as sketches were concerned. And finally, the operation started. The strength of energy was basically 160 and 160, divided into three separate groups, and it took nearly 2.5 days to carry out clearing operation. This is in NSG parlance called as the intervention operations, or in which a problem like hostage taking was very much possible. So you have to do very careful operations. NSG is a very finely trained commando force consisting of the Indian Army officers, JCOs, and Jawans. They have modern weapons, good bulletproof jacket, good communication system, etc. So they are that way an excellent or the best lot of commandos available in the country for carrying out anti-terrorist operations. However, since information was not properly available as to where were the terrorists hiding, so therefore you have to carry out clearance operation in each of the rooms. They went one room after another, and nearly 200 plus rooms had to be cleared in Hotel Taj and so many other rooms in the other hotels. The two heroes in this operation, in which 8 terrorists out of 10 were killed inside the hotels. One was Major Sandeep Singh of 7 Bihar, who led a team consisting of 6 people into the Taj Hotel. The NSG team or the SAG team for clearing operations consists of 4 to 6 people called as the HIT team, and they carry out physical intervention in each room, a restaurant, a storage place, etc. So while Major Sandeep and his team, HIT team, was carrying out this operation, they faced 2 terrorists in which Sandeep's buddy was injured. Sandeep evacuated him to a safer place and then carried on the operation himself, in which 2 terrorists were killed. However, even Sandeep was grievously hurt, and thereafter he died in this operation. He was later awarded with Ashok Chakra, the highest gallantry award of the country. Havaldar Gajendra Singh was leading a similar hit team into the other hotel. Again, here he met with 2 terrorists. The 2 terrorists were killed. However, Havaldar Gajendra Singh was also grievously injured and later was martyred. So, Havaldar Gajendra Singh was also awarded with Ashok Chakra, the highest award. In addition to this, the hit teams of the NSG consisted, the leadership was only with the officers of the Indian Army, that is lieutenant, captain, major, or lieutenant colonel ranked officer. Alternate team consisted of leadership of JCOs, basically Naib Subedars and Subedars. These teams did a great job, carried out very dangerous operation, saved most of the lives, and killed all the terrorists hiding in the hotel over a period of 2.5 days. The nation needs to needs to pay respect to these great commandos of the National Security Guard who were responsible for killing 8 terrorists out of 10 in this operation. One terrorist, Kasab, was captured alive. We know about it. And another one was killed by ASI, Assistant Sub Inspector Tukaram Obade of the Mumbai Police. It must be mentioned here that Tukaram Obade was a soldier in the Indian Army. He carried out his full service in the Indian Army. After retirement, he joined the Mumbai Police, and here in this action at 26/11, he displayed bravery of the highest order. Despite his higher age, he displayed a lot of spirit and was responsible for killing of the terrorist. We also must salute him. In these kind of operations, a lot of policemen, some firemen, and some other security forces were also injured or died. We pay respect to all of them, and we also pay our homage to all the innocent civilians who were killed in this operation. Now, this operation was called as Operation Black Tornado, and it was a very successful operation. And after this, a lot of changes have taken place in our tactics. Now, the NSG team or the SAG teams have been placed in each metro city. For example, there's a SAG team in Mumbai, in Calcutta, in Delhi, in Chennai, in Guwahati, etc. So if at all terrorists ever make a mistake of entering our metro cities again, it is very clear that they will never go back live from here. This much is definitely clear. Now, we need to carry out an assessment as to what is the state of coastal security of ours 12 years after the attack on Mumbai took place. So, very briefly, I will cover the topics into the following headings. First, we'll talk about the history of coastal security as to how, what kind of a threats, security threats we faced from the sea since 1947. Then we will talk about threat which is present today. Then we will talk about coastal security and various security forces which guard our coastline, such as the Indian Coast Guard, the Coastal Police, the Indian Navy, the Intelligence Agency, and many other security forces. Then we will talk about other agencies which are involved in the coastal security. Later, we'll also talk about the security of our ports, security of our offshore installations. Then we will talk about the security of our island territories. We have two sets of island territories, basically the Andaman and Nicobar Islands in the Bay of Bengal, and also the Lakshadweep and Minicoy Islands in the Arabian Sea. We'll also talk about as to how intelligence requires to be developed for ensuring foolproof coastal security. Very briefly, later in the later parts of our presentations in English, we'll talk about Sagarmala, we'll talk about private maritime security companies, we'll talk about the legal framework. We'll also, whenever there's a time, we'll talk about the international best practices. How does the USA guard its coastline? How does Pakistan guard its coastline? How does China guard its coastline? Can we learn something from them? We'll also talk about the use of technology in the coastal security. Then, lastly, we'll also talk about what is going to be the future scenario. Because today, when we talk of coastal security, the standoff with China in East Ladakh is still going on, where the Chinese carried out encroachment into our area on 5th of May. And presently, the two armies, the Chinese army and the Indian army, are facing each other face to face. Now, this is emboldened Pakistan and who's trying to raise the ante in Kashmir. In 2020, up till now, more than 280 terrorists have been killed, and the price has been paid by the Indian army by shedding blood. Nearly 44 of our soldiers have been martyred into various actions, including many officers. The last being just 2 weeks back, we had Captain Abhijit who was martyred. So Indian Army continues to pay the cost of defending the country's borders in blood, and the amount of blood that Indian Army is shed up till now for the country is much more than all the security organizations of the country put together. So we need to compliment the Indian Army for carrying out good anti-terrorist operations in Kashmir Valley. The line of control between India and Pakistan has turned into a battleground, and every day we hear news of Pakistan firing on us, causing some casualties to us. We retaliate and cause almost 2 times or 3 times more casualties to the Pakistanis. But the fact remains we have to continuously shed our blood. Now, Pakistan is trying to infiltrate as many terrorists into Kashmir Valley as possible because in a short while the snowfall will start on the higher reaches of Pir Panjal and areas such as Uri, Kupwara, Drukmulla, etc., the Pakistanis will not be able to infiltrate terrorists from there. So therefore, terrorism will get confined to the south of Pir Panjal, basically in the area of Punch, Rajouri, Jammu, etc. And the recent terror attack was actually an attempt to restart terrorism in Jammu Udhampur area. So these are various aspects on which we will talk. Very briefly about the history of coastal security. In the wars that we fought in 1947, 1962, 1965, very little action or no action took place into the adjoining seas. Thereafter, the best action that took place was in 1971 when our missile boats fired on the Karachi harbor, and of course the Indian Navy was able to block the Chitgaon coastline or the Bangladesh coastline so that Pakistani army could not escape from then East Pakistan or today's Bangladesh. In the Kargil war, there was hardly any requirement of the Indian Navy or naval security forces. As far as the history of coastline is concerned, what is apparent is in the 60s and 70s, a lot of smuggling started on the coastline. Some of the biggest crooks of those times came from the coastal areas, the smugglers, etc. The most famous of them is Daud Ibrahim, who was responsible for the 1993 bomb blast in Mumbai. We had a number of bomb blasts in Mumbai and also the 26/11 attack, terror attack took place from the sea. After that, when Indian Army was carrying out operations against the LTT in Sri Lanka in Operation Pavan, we could not seal the Sri Lankan coastline. Indian Army again had to shed a lot of blood there in trying to soften up the LTT. And finally, after 4 years, when the Indian Army was withdrawn from there, the back of LTT was definitely broken up, but the remainder task uh, 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 of ensuring that LTT was finished for all was of course done by the Sri Lankan army. But the fact remains that we could not seal the Sri Lankan coastline. Thereafter, we started off operations like Operation Tasha, Operation Swan, which was basically securing our western coastline and the southern coastline from the moment of terrorist smuggling and other anti-national activities. As far as 26/11 is concerned, very briefly, I have talked about that, but a lot of improvements have taken place after that. Now, what are the improvements? Or put it other way, what exactly are the security forces and what is their responsibility? As it stands now, from the baseline or from the coastline, 12 nautical miles area has been given to the to the coastal police for carrying out security operations 12 nautical miles, or for that matter, from the coastline up to 200 nautical miles, is an area which has been given to the Indian Coast Guard, or in Hindi called as the Tatarakshak Dal, for carrying out security operations. And beyond 200 nautical miles, it is the Indian Navy which has been made responsible. The police have got patrolling vessels of the variety of 5 tons and 10 tons, and they carry out patrolling, carry out surveillance of the area, carry out patrolling on the land also, etc. As far as the Coast Guard is concerned, it carries out surveillance operations inside the sea. It carries out boarding operations while at sea, etc. The Coast Guard has got a number of vessels which we will talk about later. The Indian Navy also has assets to guard our various important ports. They also guard our offshore installations such as the Bombay High platforms, etc. When we look at the India's coastal security history, we realize that up to 76, Indian Navy was the only security organization responsible for the security of the coast, and it was proving very inadequate. So therefore, the Coast Guard was born, and thereafter they started carrying out various security-based operations. However, in '99, after the Kargil War, a very detailed report was prepared on various aspects of national security under the chairmanship of the then Deputy Prime Minister Shri Lal Krishna Advani. And in that, one report pertained to border management, and in the border management, for the first time, the threat to coastal security was identified and given in writing, and thereafter, a series of recommendations were given as to how the threat should be met. Uh, a lot of funding started flowing into that. However, the desired results could never be achieved. However, after 26/11 attack, suddenly the government organizations woke up, and thereafter another plan was formulated, and thereafter again a set of recommendations was given, and coastal security force level, coastal security weapons, etc., started increasing. So today, what is the state? What we must understand, that it is evident that the maritime asymmetric challenges and the threats require a strategy. We should pivot on domain awareness. We should know what is happening around us, in the sky, on the water, under the water. We should have an effective intelligence apparatus, and we should have an armed response which can respond to this threat immediately. For example, today itself in the newspapers, you would have read a good news. An intelligence based operation was carried out by the Coast Guard, in which a fishing vessel from Sri Lanka was intercepted, and 100 kilograms of Afuganja charas was caught from them. Pistols were also caught, and the crew of the Sri Lankan fishing vessel said that these actually had come from Pakistan. Another information which came today out in the newspaper was, in order to carry out surveillance of our vast sea around us, we have decided to take loans on lease from Americans. There are certain powerful drones. Drones are a much cheaper way of carrying out surveillance because they are of a much smaller size, and they can be launched at a short notice, and their cost of operation obviously is much lower. So therefore, they are two such drones are being leased, and if found successful in our Indian conditions, more will be leased. So now, what exactly is the state of coastal security today? The threat to coastal security today is smuggling, illegal trade. It is also poaching. A lot of fishermen from other countries come and poach into our area. Attacks on vulnerable metro cities such as Mumbai are possible. We have a lot of metro cities like Mumbai, Trivandrum, Visakhapatnam, Calcutta, etc. on the coastline. A lot of our industrial important destinations are on the coastline. We have the offshore assets, especially at Bombay High in the sea, which supply nearly 25 to 30% of our oil requirement. We also have offshore installations in the Kaveri Godavari basin on the eastern coast. There's a threat of maritime terrorism, which was what 26/11 was all about. And there are terrorist groups in Southeast Asia. There are pirate groups. There are drug smugglers, etc. So these are the threats which we need to be aware of. So actually, if you want peace on your coastline, then you have to prepare for all kinds of threats that come the uh, from the sea. Now, very briefly, let us talk about as to what are the various security forces. As far as police is concerned, today we have a lot of police stations which have been established there. But the most powerful and the most potent force as far as the sea is concerned is the Indian Coast Guard. The kind of operations that it carries out are the surveillance operation, that is, looking for suspicious ships, also called as on the beat operations. That is, while you are patrolling, if suddenly you find a suspicious ship, suddenly you find some suspicious movement taking place, you stop and carrying out the next operation, that is the boarding operation. You get down to a suspicious ship, climb that boat, check up carry out a search of that boat, look at their documents, look at if they're carrying any contraband which is not authorized, etc. So there is a coastal surveillance which is being done. There's an exclusive economic surveillance that they do. Then there's the aerial surveillance which is done with the help of helicopters, with the help of maritime recce aircraft, and of course drones is what we have talked about. And the various vessels that they have is advanced offshore patrol vessels. You have the offshore patrol vessels. You have the fast patrol vessels. You have the intermediate patrol vessels. Then you have many. They have many types of vessels, which the range from 2,000 tons to about 4,000 tons, with a crew between 15 to 25, and the speed varying from 8 nautical miles to about 20, 25, 30 miles. They also have what is called as a air cushion vessels oblique vehicles, which can also be called as hovercraft, which are very useful in the marshy area. They have aerial assets such as the Dornier aircraft, which carry out a recce of the sea flying in the air. They have Chetak helicopters. They have advanced light helicopters. So they are well equipped, and they are one of the most modernizations, most modern security forces of the country. And not only that, today they are a success story as far as Make in India operations are concerned. So they are carrying out a good job. And if you look at their achievement as to what they did, if you go on the website of Indian Coast Guard, you will find their achievements listed there. The achievements basically include saving lives at the sea, carrying out interceptions and catching suspicious vessels, also catching other nations' fishing vessels which intrude into our area, etc. The next force, which is very doing a reasonable job, is our police force. Now, the police force initially did not look at the sea, but after the 26/11 attack, we have started establishing coastal police stations, and today we have nearly 73 stations established in phase one. They have nearly 2004 vessels. They have 58 outposts. They have various checkposts. You must understand that various roads which lead from the coastline into the interior area, checkposts have been placed there, outposts are there, and today, as far as the complete thing is concerned, the total number of coastal police stations as on today on the entire coastline is 131, and various patrolling vessels that the police has is 225, which is a sufficiently large number, and therefore they are able to carry out patrolling of this area. So today, as far as the assets are concerned, we are quite okay. As far as the surveillance is concerned, what we do today, we have established radars on our various areas of coastline. The radars have a range from the coastline up to 25 to 30 nautical miles, and they are on both day and night, and they are almost gap free. In fact, we have radars also established on our areas of island territories. So our radar coverage is good, and any ship entering the Indian waters is tracked down by the radars. However, these radars can track down only the bigger vessels which have an AIS, automatic identification system, on that. As per the IMO, 200 tons and above ships have supposed to have an AIS, or an electronic identity. Like if I have a mobile number, it is my electronic identity. So similarly, all these vessels have an electronic identity by which they can be tracked with the help of the radar. However, the smaller fishing vessels, or the fishing vessels which are nearly 3 lakh to 4 lakh fishing vessels in our seas, they do not have an AIS. So the government of India today is trying to put AIS on the fishing vessels. Some of the trials for this kind of AIS is already going on in the Gujarat coastline. I think about 1,000 such AIS have been put on the Gujarat coastline and the Tamil Nadu coastline, basically between us and Sri Lanka. Here, I think I was supposed to speak for 30 minutes. I've already crossed it. So what I will do now, I'll stop here, but just to tell you that we will continue with this series of coastal security threats, challenges, and way ahead. What I want to assure you today that the resources have increased, the radars have been put, the AIS has been put, the intelligence is quite good, the technical intelligence is quite good. So the coastal security is come up in a long way as far as security of the coastline is concerned. However, what is important today that various security agencies which are working here have to have a jointmanship between the Navy, the Coast Guard, the police, the intelligence agencies, the fisheries department, and many other departments which are working on the coastline. Only if you are unified, only if everybody works as a team, various security challenges that emanate from the sea will be able to face them squarely. But one thing is very, very clear that Pakistan and China will continue to exploit vulnerabilities on in any of our security lines. So therefore, we have to constantly think as to how we can improve our coastal security or land security. In the next part of the presentation, next week, we will talk about some specific recommendations with regard to Navy, with regard to Coast Guard, with regard to police, and with regard to other agencies. I'll stop here. If you have liked this video, please like it on the Facebook and try and share the link with others. Today, all of us are soldiers as far as in a battle with the Chinese and Pakistanis. China and Pakistan is carrying out a hybrid war against us, and this hybrid war is to be fought not only by the soldiers but also by every Indian citizen, because a lot of disinformation campaign takes place, a lot of other kind of activities that take place in which all of us have to act like soldiers. And we are all aware as to what kind of a biological war that China has launched against us on the name called Corona. It should actually be called a Chinese virus. So we all have to act like soldiers. We know what exactly is to be done, but we need to behave as a responsible citizen and carry out our duty, which are told to us repeatedly by our security forces, by the government. I'll stop here, and if you like this video, please like it and share it with as many people as possible. Jai Hind.